Right. All right, nerds. I have Bill Boston, who is very passionate about technology and ways to make homes more sustainable. When he told me he's very passionate about heat pumps, I was like, oh, I don't even know what that is. So I thought we'd have someone on the show and have a conversation about it. Welcome to the show, Bill, and hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Tom. Yeah, it's great. I always love talking about heat pumps and sustainability and stuff.
Yeah, why don't we start with a little introduction to yourself? Who's Bill?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'm an engineer from the UK. My background is in energy and sustainability. That's my engineering degree. I worked for a number of years in the renewable heating industry in England.
Mm-hmm.
So that was for in installers, various installers, and also one of the biggest manufacturers of heat pumps. In fact, I think they were at the time and still are the biggest supplier of heat pumps in the UK. Domestic heat pumps. It's all kind of domestic stuff. Recently moved to America, so I'm just trying to find my way in the American market, which is obviously very different. And I've been doing various courses here. I've done some ASHRAE courses, which is the aircon regulation people, and also a passive house course, which is a German design standard for sustainable buildings.
What's the biggest difference you've noticed so far between the UK and US approach to,
Oh wow!
yeah,
So approach to
housing sustainability or
Sure. Okay. So, I mean, from my experience, like heating systems, etc., in the UK, we use hydronic systems almost exclusively. So you heat up water, you move water around the building, and then
mm-hmm.
each room will have like a little radiator or maybe
Right.
underfloor, sort of subfloor heating or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whereas here, you have a central furnace, and generally speaking, you'll sort of force air around the building, and every room has its own little air registers, its little grills and stuff where the hot air comes out.
Mm-hmm.
So they're fundamentally different as far as heating systems go. The theories are kind of similar, but they are they present different challenges. I think is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, my house in Seattle uses a hydraulic heating system.
Oh, excellent.
And
Okay.
yeah, so we were excited about it because I think it was, described as being more energy efficient. But I also found that it had a little bit more complexity in terms of like how the hot water heater works and all the piping, and if there's like a leak or air pressure, air bubbles and things like that.
Yes, yeah, there are certain things you have to get right. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, like I say, there's different issues with both systems. I mean, the thing with the hydraulic system is you can have very small pipes and then move a lot of heat around a building very efficiently
Mm-hmm.
with very few losses. Like heat losses within the building.
Right.
Whereas a forced air system, you've got big
Vents.
ducts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ducts.
exactly. Yeah, and they can lose a lot of heat, and also any air that leaks out of them is going to be losses as well. So I think the number the numbers that I've heard banded around are between 10 and 30% of the energy in a forced air system can be lost through the vents.
Mm.
So yeah, so that can be very difficult. But yeah, like you say, any air bubbles in a hydronic heating system is going to ruin it. So it's
Yeah.
different things, different skills are needed, I think.
Right. Yeah. I think that's probably what happened. It wasn't necessarily that the technology is more complicated, but the people on the ground in Seattle, and this was like in 2008,
Hmm.
I don't think they had a lot of experience with hydraulic heating systems,
Fair enough.
And
Makes a
so,
massive difference. Yeah,
yeah.
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 I mean, even things like in the UK, most people have gas boilers and radiators, and so the sort of your general sort of plumber and heating engineer will know everything about that kind of system. But then
Mm-hmm.
if you give them an underfloor heating system, they'll start getting a bit sort of a bit anxious about it sometimes,
Right.
and
Right.
it does make a big difference. So yeah, it's all these things have their own different little nuances and that.
Yeah. When you moved here,
Hmm.
one of the biggest lifestyle changes I noticed was the size. Because as you may know, I lived for a few years in Europe, and
Sure.
I was always surprised at how relatively smaller our washer and dryers were in Switzerland versus coming back here, and you've got these like huge, massive like
Yeah.
whirlpool duet systems that you could put like, a whole family inside one of them.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can get a couple of duvets in there, you know. Yeah,
Seriously,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
But
yeah. I mean,
what's that
well,
all about? Why are they so small in Europe? Is it
I
the
don't know,
energy
to be honest
consumption?
with you. Well, possibly, yeah. I mean,
Hmm.
also houses are often smaller in
Yeah,
Europe
yeah,
as well. You know,
sure.
spaces are a bit smaller. I mean, even having a dryer in the UK is often seen as a bit
Right.
of a luxury. Yeah,
Yeah,
most or a lot of people still dry on a line outside. You know, which is
yeah,
obviously free, but not great when it's raining, which it usually
yeah,
is over there. You know.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
no, the one thing I noticed, Brittany's place in California when I went and visited, it was a gas fired dryer. And
Yeah.
that just sounds terrifying, you know, having like a flame next to all that lint just sounds it just I don't know, it made me very nervous.
It when you put it that way, it does sound kind of scary. On the other hand, like, man, does it get dry your clothes quickly?
So yeah, sure, yeah. You set a fire on it, and then yeah,
Yeah,
that'll
yeah.
dry it,
You're
dry
like
it
cooking
for
your
you.
clothes. I
Oh
I
yeah,
just
that's
yeah,
it.
I never found my clothes would get fully dry in Switzerland. Even though we had a
Really.
dryer,
Mm.
I felt like the temperature didn't get nearly as high as I'm used to seeing, but I think
Oh
that's
right.
probably one of those trade-offs, right? Like
Possibly,
those,
yeah, yeah.
the carbon that's probably produced by the big kind of gigantic washer and dryers is, I'm sure, much more than the smaller
Well,
ones.
as you might know, we just moved into a new place. We had to get a new
Hmm.
washer and dryer, and we got a heat pump dryer. So that's a little segue into heat pumps. They're cropping up everywhere, you know.
Oh wow! So
Mm.
the the clothes dryer
Hmm.
is the heat is generated by hot water in a pipe.
No, no. So
Oh,
so a heat pump is it's essentially sort of a closed loop system.
uh-huh.
Most of the ones that I'm familiar with, anyway, are
Yeah.
closed loop systems which contain pipework with a refrigerant in it, and that's something that boils at a very low temperature,
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
then you pass that into a compressor. The compressor obviously compresses it down,
Yeah.
and as you increase the pressure of a gas or a vapor, it increases the temperature. So that's where the heat comes into it. And then you
Oh.
can use that heat. You can either move it outside or put it in the case of a dryer, put it into the clothes. And it's exactly the same technology as you use in a fridge or in your AC system as
Oh.
well. So yeah, so it's just different sizes. You know. So yeah.
Yeah. So and how is do you get enough heat produced using that
Yeah.
approach?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously it's a brand new thing, so it's sort of as good as they can make them at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
It might take an extra sort of 15-20 minutes to get a full load dry, but yeah, it comes out lovely and dry and uses less energy, or that's the hope anyway. You know.
So does that lower your utility bills as well?
Yep, yeah, that's the idea. Yeah, I mean the thing is we haven't really got anything to compare it to at the
Right.
moment. So yeah, we just kind of doing it on a bit of a wing and a prayer that it's actually going to be a reduction in our electricity bills. But you know, theory says that any heat pump's going to be better than an electric heater. So I trust it.
Wow. And is that also provide cooling capability, or do you have a separate thing for like a separate air conditioner
What? Well, the heat pump, the dryer itself is literally just a dryer with a little heat pump inside it, so it
inside?
doesn't look
Okay, got it.
it doesn't look any different. The main difference with the dryer is you don't need a little vent to take it
Right.
outside. You know, with the condensing dryer, you need to get rid of all that hot air.
Sure.
All that hot air, all the liquid in that condenses out, and then we've just got a little pipe that goes into the
Sink or
washer
something.
drain. Yeah,
Right, right,
exactly. Yeah,
right.
same
Yeah.
place that the washer drains into.
Oh,
Yeah, and we've got an AC unit outside, and yeah, and our system at the minute is your standard kind of furnace AC system and ductwork. So yeah, it's a pretty sort of standard system, I think.
now you talked about the notion of a passive house. That's
Yeah.
what is that all about?
So that I think that like the passive house is kind of sort of a trademark. It's a description of the kind of building method,
Mm-hmm.
and it's what they call a fabric first building method. So it concentrates on insulation and airtightness as the two main kind of factors in maintaining the inside environment, if you like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so you essentially have a very well insulated building which is very well sealed from outside air, so you're not losing any heat or in fact gaining any heat. So I mean, you know how hot it gets in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
That heat can infiltrate in as well. So if you can stop that from happening, if you can stop that heat movement, then you can maintain the inside temperature a lot more effectively. The main things are, yeah, lots of insulation, very well sealed, and a mechanical ventilation system. And if you've got those three things, then you can heat and cool a building with very little energy, essentially.
Interesting. And then does the air get kind of stale inside? Like how do you get
No,
fresh
yeah.
air?
So because you've got this mechanical ventilation system, it's
Uh-huh.
constantly pumping clean air in. So yeah, so that's one of the vital parts of it. And you can also open windows, etc.
Right.
But yeah, it's kind of at the moment houses as they're built now are built to be quite leaky. They're built to allow air in to
Mm-hmm.
kind of replenish what we breathe, so
Mm-hmm.
that our um, say carbon dioxide doesn't build up and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But yeah, there are very, very effective systems where it's essentially just a fan blowing air in, another fan sucking air out from
Uh-huh.
rooms, and then you can exchange the heat between them. So you're bringing in cool air from outside, you're blowing out warm air from inside, and you can exchange the heat between them, saving energy. So there's a lot of different little technologies out there which all kind of, when combined together, create a very energy efficient building.
Oh, so when you talk about exchanging the heat between them, I would imagine that would need to be dynamic to the extent that in the winter, when you're bringing that fresh air and you got to heat it up a little bit, but maybe in the summer, if the outside air is cooling at night,
Mhm.
then it sort of dynamically decides like, oh, this outside air needs to be heated, it needs to be cooled, or it can be just left alone. How does that
So
work?
yeah, there's a lot of different controls out there. Yeah, I mean, you can have ones which are just quite a simple heat exchanger,
Uh-huh.
which just pass the air across, and the heat transfer happens naturally because heat always goes from warm to cold. So it
Mm-hmm.
always wants to travel into whatever's
Right.
colder. But yeah, you can have things like bypasses. So in sort of spring and summer, where you've got more useful sort of cool air outside and stuffy air inside, you can just bring fresh air directly in. But yeah, there's all these different kind of systems. Oh, here we go. Yeah, that's the kind of thing we're talking about.
Yeah.
So yeah, that little box in the bottom right corner,
Uh-huh.
where it crosses over, that's a
Right.
heat exchanger, and that could be something as simple as a lattice of paper where the air flows never touch each other, but they can transfer
Right.
the heat between each other. So it's quite a simple bit of kit, really, but it's
Hmm.
just kind of a nice little addition to these sort of systems.
Yeah, that reminds me, that same house in Seattle that we installed a whole house fan in the attic,
Mm,
and it kind of pushes it sucks air from inside the house and pushes it out into the attic, and then you open up the windows. You would usually do it at night because at night it
hmm
kind of cools off a little, and you can like
mm.
get rid of all of the hot air that collected during the daytime and then suck in the cool night air. And it
Sure,
was actually
yeah.
quite
Oh,
effective.
yeah. I bet. Yeah, I mean that sounds like an even more sort of simple and straightforward way of making the most of natural cooling. But yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds like a great idea. Yeah, so something that's cheap to run, easy to install, and
Yeah.
effective. That's the sort of stuff you want, really. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember anytime like in the summer, especially in Seattle, it starts cooling down 6, 7 p.m. after, the sun starts coming down.
Mm.
And you turn the switch and open the windows downstairs, and it would suck in the cool air and then push all the hot air through the house up, and the whole house would cool off like 10 degrees in like a few minutes. It was
Oh yeah,
incredible.
sounds ideal, to be honest with you. Especially
Yeah.
when you get those stuffy nights where the
Yeah.
house is holding on to all that heat. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, well, that's super cool. What's your take
Mm.
on solar? There's a lot of it here in
Yeah.
California. Are you seeing a lot of it you're in Denver, right? Or
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah, we're just north of Denver. Yeah.
Hmm.
Apparently, it's the second sunniest state here. So
Oh, wow.
I mean, I would have thought there would be a lot more solar, to be honest with you. So I'm just gazing out the window at the local fracking site. So there's huge amounts of fracking as well,
Mm.
to get like natural gas and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would have thought that solar would be an um, ideal energy source here. I think that the main issues that I've come across with solar, and also in the UK with heat pumps, isn't the actual technology itself; it's the grid. So here in Colorado, there's only about 5 or 6 million people. You could cover the whole state with solar panels, and you wouldn't use a fraction of what you produce. So you
Mm.
have to get that energy to where it's needed.
Right.
And unfortunately, the grid at the moment just it isn't capable, isn't suitable of doing that kind of thing. So that's the kind of more large scale infrastructure that we need to be able to utilize all this resource. Because that's essentially what it is. The sun beating down on Colorado is an amazing resource,
It's free
and
energy.
it's
Yeah.
free energy essentially, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
apart from the cost of the panels, which pay
Yeah.
themselves off in a very short amount of time. But yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately, you just can't get it to where it's needed.
Yeah, that's too bad. Like, what's
Mm.
interesting in Cali, there was some kind of ethical or philosophical debate over solar panels, in that what happened was the state provided tax incentives for people to install solar. A lot
Hmm.
of people did. And what happened was it ended up reducing the demand for electricity from the grid, as you would have, expect.
Hmm.
But now the utility companies are like, hey, I have fixed costs, so I need to raise the prices of the electricity. And what
Right.
happened was the people who could afford to install the solar panels, basically, upper income people,
Sure.
they were like, fine, keep raising the prices because I'm not really drawing from the grid anymore.
Hmm.
But then the people who couldn't afford the solar, like maybe they're renting a place or they're, kind of lower income,
Lower income and that. Yeah.
then their bills were going up. And so it was this
Mm.
interesting kind of
Sure.
effect, right?
Like moral quandary in it. Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, because all the evidence says that we have to reduce the amount of CO2 we're producing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if that's pushing people into fuel poverty, then yeah, then not that's not worth the sort of price, is it? At the end of
Yeah.
the day,
Yeah.
um, no,
It's
it's a very difficult one to get through, especially the way that energy markets work over here, where you essentially have a monopoly, don't you? Each
mhm,
state or each area has its energy provider, and they're the
mhm.
only ones that provide it. So I don't know too much about how all of that kind of stuff works, but it seems like changes need to be made. Like their business model is essentially um, not as good as it used to be.
Yeah, yeah. What do you see like in the UK? Are they
Hmm.
trying to generate power? I mean, obviously they don't get as much sun, so how are they gonna?
No.
Is it
So
nuclear or what?
I mean, no. So it's wind is the big one. So
Okay.
we get up to about a quarter of our energy from wind, and
Wow.
also yeah. Apparently it's the windiest place in Europe, and yeah, offshore wind is really sort of making a great impact on the grid. And there's still a bit of solar as well. There, it's just not as effective. Obviously, you got like between probably about April and September, you get a reasonable amount of sun,
Mm.
and that works. But yeah, wind is pretty much consistent. Um, and yeah, so we moved away from coal into gas fired power stations. And then yeah, we're moving more and more towards a clean grid with wind power essentially. Um, Wave power is also they're trying to do other things with the sea
Oh,
at the end of the
wow.
day, because
Yeah.
yeah, so there's a lot of research going into that, but anything you do in a marine environment is going to be expensive, so
Yeah.
it's difficult to do.
That seems like a pretty kind of intense place to have hardware and equipment and stuff.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. I think it's a very difficult kind of environment. Yeah,
Was there any controversy around the wind stuff? I still remember
yeah,
President Trump for some reason being really concerned about birds, and he was like, "Oh, we can't have wind power because it's
yeah.
not
It's
uh,
dangerous for the birds.
for the
Yeah, I
birds."
mean,
And I was like, "Wow, I never realized he was such an environmental like wildlife activist." But
who
apparently, he
would have
cares.
thought? Who would have
Yeah,
thought?
yeah. Well, was there any of that in the
Um,
UK?
yeah, so people don't really like them very close to their houses. They're enormous structures.
Right. Yeah,
I don't know if you've seen one up close, but
they're big.
they're
Yeah,
intimidating. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, but luckily most of them are offshore. I, I don't think that many people are that worried about the birds. Although I do know that they do have an effect. You
Right.
know, if they're put in like migratory routes or something like that. So I think that is taken into account. But yeah, I did hear one thing actually, where apparently if you paint one of the rotors black,
Mm.
then birds avoid it a lot more. So I don't know what that's about, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. So maybe the white blades are harder for them to detect or notice.
Possibly,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, so there's sort of, I think there's people looking into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I did see something about how eagles were getting hit over here, but
Mm.
yeah, so it's definitely an issue, but it's not. I don't think it's a reason not to do it. There's
Yeah.
so much energy available, like you say, free energy that it, it's definitely worth doing.
Well, President Trump, if you're listening to this, you should sleep well tonight, knowing that there are ways to protect those birds that you care
Well,
so deeply
exactly.
about.
Yeah. You can usually think your way around these things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Now, you mentioned there's some fracking going around in Colorado.
yeah,
What's
loads.
your
Yeah.
read on that? I mean, it's been a
Oh man.
boom economically for a lot of
Yeah.
the domestic energy producers.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I mean, I, it's more fossil fuels. I mean, the way I
Mm.
understand it releases huge amounts of methane into the air just from leaks.
Hmm.
Yeah, it all depends on the price of the gas as well, doesn't it? I know in the UK, they want to try fracking, but it's a lot more difficult over there because of the geology, because
Hmm.
it's such a crowded island.
Right.
There's fewer places to actually do the deed, as it were, and it causes earthquakes and stuff like that. I mean, I would much rather leave it in the ground if we could. But it's just worth so much money. It's difficult to convince
Yeah.
people otherwise.
It does seem like almost by definition a very invasive procedure to the planet, like you're
Mm.
drilling and pumping stuff into the into
Yeah,
the
yeah,
ground, right?
fracturing it. Yeah, literally ripping it
Yeah.
apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then fossil fuels are so useful in so many different ways that we become so addicted to it. We'll do pretty much anything to get them.
Yeah. Yeah, we are. That's a good way of putting it. We are addicted to energy, you know.
Mm, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what you think what's the career path look like for someone that's
Oh
interested in
wow.
all these things? Is it like a booming industry right now?
Yes, yeah. So I mean, it was it's definitely growing. It's difficult to know from a personal standpoint. It's difficult to know exactly which bit is going to be the best for me to get
Mm-hmm.
into.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the UK, like the heating industry, the heat pump heating industry is being pushed by the government. So that was really nice to kind of be a part of this sort of wave of renewable energy that was crossing the country, and
Mm-hmm.
we having like a really sort of pronounced effect, But over here, it seems like there's a lot more difficulties. There are tax rebates, but I've looked into them, and it's a few $100 for putting in something that might cost like $5,000 to $10,000. So
Mm.
it's not really being pushed as a uh, the kind of answer to the question of how do we reduce our carbon. So I mean, I'm looking more into AC stuff because that seems to be a good place to start. And I've just got to learn about the systems more, I think, is
Yeah.
the main thing.
So if we did move to heat pumps for the whole house, you can
Mm.
use them both to cool and to
Yeah.
heat your home, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, so they're essentially a reversible air conditioning unit. Yeah, so when it's in AC mode, the hot air gets pumped into the outside, and the
Yeah.
cool air gets pumped around your house. And then when it's in heating mode, it will do the reverse, and all the cold air just gets pushed outside.
Well, that's super cool. And is the
Yeah,
argument that so the argument is that it's more energy efficient, I suppose, because of its
yeah,
compression or whatever it
yeah.
does?
That's it. So essentially, because you're only putting energy into the compressor,
Yeah.
and a few controls here and there, but that's pretty minimal. The big energy input is the compressor, and because you can move maybe 3 to 5 times more heat than the energy you put into the compressor, you're getting a much better return in terms of energy out to energy in, which is the idea really. I don't know anything else where
Yeah.
you can say I'm giving you one and you give me five.
Right.
It is literally that kind of simple at the end of the day.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah,
But it
they're
but
great
I
bits of kit.
guess it's like solar in that you got to pay up front some
Yes,
expense, right?
that's
Yeah.
it. Yeah, and as long as the market is kind of as long as it's a kind of fringe aspect of the market, you don't really get the kind of economies of scale that you need, and all of this kind of stuff.
Mm.
Um, and the other thing I've noticed in America, because they are used a lot over here already, especially in the sort of southern states where you don't need much heating.
Mhm.
But they're kind of less sophisticated ones. So
Mhm.
the newer ones, the ones that have been brought out in the past sort of 10 years or so, are much more sophisticated and much more energy efficient. So that's the other thing to be aware of as well. So they're not all created equal at the end of the day.
Interesting.
Mm.
Um So tell me what have you seen these heat pumps being used in other countries in more mainstream fashion, or
Yeah,
is it still early in other places too?
yeah. So I think most of Europe is really getting behind like heat pumps as the
Mm,
main heating source. Scandinavia's been using them for years. And obviously they have proper winters as well. They kind of they build their houses well. They use heat pumps and
yeah.
with a bit of additional heating from electricity when it's really cold. But yeah, it's essentially most of their heating's done through heat pumps. Yeah, Germany. I mean France. And anywhere where you get cheap electricity, heat pumps become an incredible asset in terms of like a heating system, because you can get 5 units of heat out for 1 unit of heat,
Mhm.
1 unit of electricity in. So that
Yeah.
that all comes down to like the cost of the system. So running costs can be very low.
Right. So you're using electricity versus gas as
Yeah,
well, right?
that's
As
right.
liquid?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so taking France as an example, they've got loads of nuclear uh, electricity, so from nuclear power stations, and it's very cheap. So the electricity they use is very cheap, and they've got a very high baseline, so they're producing quite a lot all the time,
Mhm.
and so a heat pump in that situation becomes a very cost-effective means of heating. Somewhere like the UK, where you're burning gas to produce electricity,
Mhm.
it starts becoming a bit more of a calculation, because obviously you're either burning gas to produce electricity or you're burning it directly in your home.
Right.
You've got transmission losses when you're burning the electricity, when you're burning gas for electric, versus just like the inefficiency of combustion in like a gas boiler at home. But even then, at the moment, the kind of cost of electric versus the cost of gas, using a heat pump is very similar. So the running costs are very similar for both different
Mm.
technologies.
So ultimately, a lot of it does come to how the society produces that electricity as well.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned in the UK, you guys use a quarter of your power is from wind, which is so cool.
Mm.
Um, what's your take on nuclear? I've heard the argument that we have such uh, a gap in terms of how much carbon we need to reduce that
Mm.
you've got to consider nuclear as an option.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's definitely worth considering. I mean, my issues with nuclear are that it's incredibly expensive. It's amazing as a baseline, as that kind of base load for the
Mhm.
grid. It's fantastic for that. It takes a long time to build, and you still need fuel for it as well. You still need that
Mhm.
nuclear fuel. So that has to, and that's not a renewable resource. So it's a carbon free energy, but it's not a renewable energy system by any means. I've been seeing a lot of things about very small nuclear generators. I don't know if you've seen anything about that at
Yeah,
all.
yeah,
So
these like kind of
the little
cold
modular ones.
fusion. Mhm. Mhm.
Well, I think Rolls Royce are doing like um, a little fission, so like a traditional nuclear power station, but
Oh wow.
very very small. So instead of being like a 3 Mile Island or something, or
Right.
a proper
Like a
facility,
modular
it's just
reactor.
a
Yeah.
small modular reactor. Yeah. So
Huh.
they look quite interesting, but again, it's this fuel issue. I don't know. I don't know where you get uranium around here, but it's still digging it out of the earth, and yeah,
Yeah.
so there's issues with it, which I think you could probably. I think if you're going to put all that money into something, I think putting it into storage, so energy storage, grid
Mhm.
scale energy storage, is probably a reasonable idea, and also energy efficiency as well. That's the other thing that's really important. Trying to reduce the amount of energy people are using across their lives, across their homes and stuff. It's
Mhm.
yeah, if we can do that, you won't need these enormous power stations so much.
Yeah. I mean, certainly coal and oil are pretty kind of carbon intense. I mean, we don't
Certainly are,
discharge, right?
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
sure, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Oh man.
What's that? CO2 equivalent per kilowatt hour. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it. Yeah. And then, okay, so just talking about heat pumps, their effectiveness. If you look at that carbon intensity per kilowatt hour,
Uh-huh.
if you could say quarter that for
Uh-huh.
when you're using a heat pump.
Yeah.
So the natural gas, instead of being 469,
Oh, I see
would
what you mean.
be
Yeah.
more like one and a half.
Yeah.
What
120 or something or
Yeah,
115 or something.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are the kind of numbers that you can start looking at when you're using heat pumps and these
Right.
other energy efficient means of heating.
Yeah, so your point is like, well, if you are going to get your electricity from a dirty source, then get the most out of every watt of that electricity that you
Well,
can,
exactly,
right?
exactly. Yeah,
Right.
that's it. Exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's like everyone changing to LED light bulbs.
Right.
So
Right.
changing from 60 watts to 5 watts across the board, that has
Yeah.
a massive effect when everyone does it. So yeah, if you can get a mass adoption of these things, then yeah, you can have a really big effect.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I guess with the pretty strong housing market, do you see like you were in the market recently?
Mm,
Did you see people kind of touting how energy efficient the house was, or like I don't notice that. Like I
no,
tend to see people
it
focus
was a
on.
bear pit, man. It was it was nightmarish. It was people offering 50 grand, 100 grand over the asking
Yeah,
price. People buying houses without seeing them.
yeah,
It's yeah, it's definitely a seller's market out there. So the house that we got, and one of the reasons why I liked it was it already had solar panels built in.
Mm.
So that was something that I was looking at, but it definitely wasn't pushed as a as like a benefit, you know.
Mm. How much now the solar isn't able to produce electricity for all of your needs during the daytime, or does it?
It most of it, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
So the app that I haven't had a chance to kind of sit down with the bills yet and see how much
Yeah.
we're buying from the grid and how much we're using. But I think it's pretty much everything that we use is from the solar during the day,
Right.
and we're doing things like running the dryer, running
Right.
the washing machine and the dishwasher during the day to make the most of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't actually sat down with the numbers yet. I've only been in here for a couple of weeks, you know.
Now, if during the day you're producing more than you're using, does the
Hmm.
utility pay you back for putting power into the grid?
No, so the system that we've got is we don't own it. It was it's a relatively new house. It's only about 5 years old,
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
I think it was an option for the initial buyers of the house.
Right.
And we've got a contract um, with the installers essentially, or the
Okay.
people who maintain the system. So we pay a fee every month. It's $40 or $50 a month or something, and then we can use as much of the electricity as we like, and then any that gets sent to the grid, I think gets. Oh, maybe we do get a credit. Actually,
Uh-huh.
I think we might get a credit. But yeah, we yeah. So maybe that is how it works.
So there
Yeah.
it sounds like there's a third party that has partially financed the initial cost, and then they're kind of getting paid back over time.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it. So we
Yeah.
just pay this company
Right.
every month, and then they maintain it, and it's their system
It's
essentially.
not Solar
Um,
City, is it? Is it
it
Musk's
might,
system?
yeah, yeah. No, no, no. It's
Okay.
not Solar City. No, no.
Okay.
They've all got very similar names, haven't they? So
Yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And then I guess it doesn't have a battery to store in the day
No,
to be using,
no.
right?
So that's one of the things that I would quite like to put on, but I think
Yeah.
in the contract that I signed, we have to okay it with the company before we
Right,
can.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, here in Cali, because of the forest fires and stuff, we've had
Mm,
rolling outages and stuff. And there's a
mm,
few people in our neighborhood who have these power walls or
mhm.
equivalent. And I'm so jealous of them that they basically never have outages because they just
Sure,
kind
yeah.
of,
They
the
flip the
outages
switch
usually,
and
yeah, they don't
mm,
even, it just automatically comes on
yeah,
and it gets like recharged in the daytime from their solar panels and they kind of have this like independence.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's a bit of a dream, really, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed.
yeah, yeah. No, sounds like a great one. The other way of doing that, which I'm quite intrigued by, is um, electric vehicles. So you can get an EV with sort of a two-way
Right.
charger discharger, and you can charge your car up during the day, and then if you're home, I suppose I don't know, but and then you use that electricity at night when you're at home. So yeah,
Yeah. And the car is kind of an additional storage unit of
exactly.
energy for you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Yeah.
it. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that's going to be an interesting way forward.
So neat. Yeah.
Mm.
I guess hopefully those scientists working on next gen battery technology, they're kind of going to be
Yes.
changing the world. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's it. Yeah, I heard. Is it Toyota? I think it might be Toyota. They've just released a car, or they're releasing a car with a solid state battery, so a solid state lithium battery,
Mm.
which is much safer than the electrolyte ones that we use at the moment. Um, so that's something to look
Yeah.
out for as well. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, it's
Mm.
amazing. I don't know what it's like in Colorado, but here in California, I feel like it's now 20% of the cars on the road are all electric. It's crazy.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I
It's
mean,
nuts.
there's
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. I mean, is that something to do with the incentives, the kind of
It's the
government
incentives and probably
assistance.
also the rising costs of gas.
Yes,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah, and I suppose that there's quite a few people who have the means to be able
Well, yeah,
to
that too.
to jump on. Yeah,
Yeah, you've
yeah.
got you've got tech or early adopters who have
Hmm.
money,
Hmm.
and then you've got like $6 a gallon for gas here, and it's like,
Oh,
well,
no way,
man, yeah,
really?
yeah.
Blimey. And
So
that's about as expensive as it is in the UK. I think it's.
yeah,
I think it hit about £1 a litre during the pandemic, which is about $4. Well, it's about £4 a gallon. It's really expensive in the UK.
yeah.
I can't quite do the maths on
Yeah, I
that.
remember there were like lines. Like my brother lives in London, and he was like, "Yeah, there's like At one point, there were lines waiting to fuel up. You know, like
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was kind of nutty. And
yeah,
now
yeah.
with with Russia and Ukraine and stuff,
Mm,
that's
yeah.
not going to open up. And I don't think the Saudis are producing like releasing more. So
No,
it's
okay.
going to be
What
tough.
they
Yeah.
they're holding on to it, are they?
Yeah, I think we are
Difficult.
begging them to but like it's another reason if a lot of times interestingly enough the from a political point of view, the right tends to be a very strong advocate of American independence.
Mm.
But they are many are suspicious of like environmentalists or taxing fossil
Yeah,
fuels and things. But
it does
like
seem a bit weird, doesn't it?
right,
Because
like if you if,
that's a guaranteed way of getting independence if you're producing
yeah.
your own. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think though they would love for everybody to use natural gas, but
Mm.
if we all move to more efficient, um, kind of renewable sources of electricity,
Mm.
and that like literally was a time where and they were often kind of Trump supporters, would it's called. Have you ever heard it called the term rolling coal? It's
No,
where
what's that?
if you see like a Prius or if you see a Tesla
Mm.
and you have like usually it's a pickup truck that is like belching black smoke, they
Okay.
purposely will drive in front of the electric car and produce a lot of exhaust to sort of make it more uncomfortable for the electric car driver that's
Oh,
behind them. And it
people are
just
weird, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, like you go on YouTube, look for rolling coal, and
Right.
basically it's like a whole thing. And then
Yeah.
there was also the point where these pickup trucks would purposely park in Tesla recharging spots.
Yeah, okay, I did see that. Like across all the bays kind of thing, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you're like, seriously, like if you
Mm.
want to drive a diesel truck, like that's your decision. Like,
Sure.
why do you have to go out of your way to kind of obstruct people who want to buy a different car? Like where's their
I
freedom?
really don't. That's some of the stuff that I really don't understand.
Yeah,
That just doesn't make any sense, does it?
yeah, I mean then at that point you're just getting super tribal and trying to
Mm.
like own the libs or whatever, and it's like so
Sure. Yeah.
unproductive. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean you're wasting your own fuel as well.
Yeah,
The
seriously.
person in the Tesla doesn't mind.
No.
They wipe it off or what have you, but
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
it
yeah.
can't be good for your fuel efficiency.
No, 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 especially with the current prices. So maybe
Well, sure, yeah,
less people are rolling coal now than they used
yeah,
to. Well, Bill, it's been great to have you
yeah.
on the show and chat about heat pumps and
Mm.
home kind of renewable sources of energy. And thanks for bringing this topic on. I noticed some
Okay.
people in the chat were saying it's great to kind of change it up on Nerds for Humanity since we're usually talking about politics all the time. And of course,
Sure, yeah.
it's
I
hard
mean,
to avoid it.
we can take this into politics if you like as well. I mean,
We it's hard not to avoid it, but I'm
sure.
glad the first part of our convo was very much focused
On the
on
tech.
yeah, on the kit,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah, yeah. No,
yeah.
thanks for having me on. Yeah, it was very, very enjoyable.
Well, look, as you continue doing research and learning more about kind of the latest and greatest things that people are doing for their houses,
Mhm.
definitely reach back out and we'll have you back on the show for a little update from Bill.
Nice one. Okay, thanks very much for that, Tom. Yeah, I'll keep that in mind. I'll get scrolling. See what's new.
Sounds good. With that, we'll say goodbye, nerds.
Goodbye, nerds. Yeah.
Thanks, Bill. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. Well, that was Bill Boston. Um, Little change of pace for Nerds for Humanity. Um, I think we're gonna have Will Conway from the Forward Party on the show very soon. Tomorrow, Sunday, May 1st at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So we will go back into a little more politics with Will. And what I'd like to ask, and Will, just so you all know, Will Conway is like the national head of Forward Party like national organizer or something. He was recommended to me by Andrew because I tried to get Andrew on. I was like, hey man, what's going on with the Forward Party? He's like super busy, but reach out to Will. So we're gonna have Will on the show. And I'm going to ask Will a bunch of questions like, hey, what's going on? Like, why did you all start the Forward Party? Like, what's the progress been so far? Are you going to be endorsing more candidates beyond endorsements? What are you going to do? Like, are you going to try and get a candidate onto the 2024 presidential ballot? So, if you want to know more, about that, make sure you subscribe to this channel if you haven't already subscribed. And if it's after May 1, try and find that interview on replay. And if you're watching this live, then we'll have Will on tomorrow, and I'll try and hit some questions from the audience as well. Before we go, we should give some shout outs to people who make this channel possible. And then I'm also going to do some shout outs for some of the people candidates that have gotten the most approval votes at ofthepeople.us. But let's start with our Nerds for Humanity members. And let's see here. We're going to start with the highest level, the executive vice president, senior vice president, and that is Soldier One. So thank you, Soldier One, for making this content and channel possible. It helps kind of let me know that people value what we're doing and so that we can keep making content. So thank you, Soldier One. At the next level, we have the VP level. In order of longest member, Kristen Slevin, Bike, and Stephen Jones. At the next level, we have our hardcore, Gene, David, DK, Jackalego, Kirsch, Mr. History, Byron, Mona, Susan, Vaughn. I think Vaughn's in the live stream. Yang Dang, Tony, Robert, Dean, Stat Nerd, Galessa, Jay Parent, AH, Jay Bryan, Vivian, Dana, Jason Parth, and Daniel. And then at the verified level, which is only a couple bucks a month if you want to join, just click the join link in YouTube. We have Lisa, Albert, Brandon, Peter, Rez, Your Maman, Sophia, Mike, Jadwiga, Doris, Emerald, Ben, Rasta, James, Emma, Hui, Ira, Shoni, Jameson, Dr. William, Karen, Monica, Arden, Semery, Mai, David, Brittany, Alexandra, Juana, Warren, Lucky, and Kevin. So thank you to all of the members who make this channel possible. I also want to give a shout out to political candidates who have elected to list their campaigns on ofthepeople.us. And what we're going to do, since this stream was a lot about environmental stuff, we're going to highlight the top trending OTP candidates who support the Green New Deal. And then we'll just take a look at who those folks are. So let's go to ofthepeople.us, which is here. So as you can see here, I can sort by tag, and I'm going to filter and say Green New Deal, most popular. Let's see, is this? Yeah. All right. We've got Erica, James, Shervin Azami, Eric Storzand, Jason Call, Alexandra Hunt, Brittany Ramos, Lauren Hubbard, Anthony Felix, Jessica Mason. These are some great candidates that you can learn more about. And like you can even filter, I think you can filter by zip code. So like if you said, hey, who's near 94061, you can see like, okay, that also support the Green New Deal would be James Coleman and Lauren Hubbard. And looks like Shervin Azami in California. So check out Of the People. But the Green New Deal folks would be Dan, Joaquin, Erica, David Kim, James Russell, Shervin Azami, Eric Storzen. So shout outs to all those. If you are curious about these candidates, just go to ofthepeople.us. And if you're like, hey, I really like, Larry Sharp, let's say, then you just click on their profile, you click approve, and that kind of boosts them up the ranking. Oh, we got a super sticker from Brittany Crosby. Let me get the bell, Brittany. Get that bell. Cowbell. Oh, thank you, Brittany. Appreciate it. Appreciate your support. Very cool, Brittany. Vaughn's like, yay. All right. So I've got to jump to another appointment, but I did want to thank Bill for coming on the show again. And on Of the People, if you know anybody running for office, please ask them to list themselves on ofthepeople.us and check out some of those candidates on the profile. You can also see what they've been tweeting about. You can follow them on Twitter. Most of them have videos, and it's just a great way to get to know candidates that you may not see oftentimes in kind of like the normal traditional media. So with that, I will say goodbye, nerds. See you tomorrow with Will Conway from the Forward Party.